For nearly the past year, every time I check my Instagram feed, I see a meme like this.
Want to know what the surface of Mars feels like? Well, this is MGS-1.
No one hears the word.
And I'm delighted every time. The amount of brain rot Gen Z terms I've encountered and incorporated into my vocabulary this past year alone would convince a Victorian era child that I was reciting an incantation. In our modern day, trends and fads come and go at lightning speed. So what fascinates me is that these memes, often getting hundreds of thousands of likes, are references to a video game that is nearly 10 years old and requires nearly 30 years of convoluted video game lore and context to remotely understand. Maybe I am exaggerating and overanalyzing here. It's a silly Rick Roll meme at the end of the day, but I still find that fascinating. How has Metal Gear, a series which has largely concluded 10 years ago and has only recently been revived, been relevant this entire time? Well, I think it goes beyond just 80s synth pop and action movie homages. As a storyteller, Hideo Kojima has his finger on the pulse of past and modern political issues and combines that knowledge with not-so-science fiction technology to create his worlds, sometimes resulting in eerily accurate predictions of the near future. I say this as a lifelong fan of his work. It's not perfect, and I will never claim it is. There are a number of well-researched articles and videos that go into the flaws of his writing, most of which I agree with. A lot of credit should also be due to the amazing talent he surrounds himself with. Yoji Shinkawa's designs alone are responsible for half of the identity of these games, but I digress. Point is, I don't think this should discount the fact that a number of his games, which were initially received with mixed opinion, have actually garnered increasingly positive reception over time. Let's start with the first of his controversial games, Metal Gear Solid 2. So in case you aren't aware, the hype for this game was insane. Well, so I've heard. I was running around in my diapers around this time. It was going to be another badass military action movie you could play. People were excited to return as Snake and roleplay as a rugged, muscular, 6-foot, huge piece of ass. The game essentially marketed itself as another Metal Gear Solid 1. This was also before you could download games on a digital storefront, so people were buying another game just to try the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo included with it. Players were that eager to have the same experience again. So the game comes out, you play the first hour as Snake, and then you play as this guy for the rest of the game. And this was just the first rug being pulled. At a high level, for one, the game reveals itself to be a sort of commentary on the repetitiveness of sequels, the game literally saying that its events are a simulation of the first game's story.
You're all nothing but pawns placed to create the perfect simulation.
Second, a good chunk of the ending pretty much turns into a 3 a.m. Discord call with your homies about the long-term effects of unregulated online discourse, how this will affect the human race going forward, whether people should have the right to think for themselves when their personalities and thoughts are formed by the opinions of others, and reflecting on the importance of art and what legacy we will leave behind as individuals and as a species on this planet. So suffice to say, this was a lot for gamers in 2001 to appreciate. Even by today's video game story standards, there is so much to unpack here, almost too much. And that conversation probably shifted when the real-world events began to pop up. By the early 2010s, social media had really started hitting its stride, and not too long after, it became apparent how fast conversations online would devolve to extremism and groupthink. I mean, talk to the average person in their 20s nowadays, and you can pretty quickly tell that they're regurgitating opinions they've heard online.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
So many memes in both the sociological sense and the brain rot sense have integrated into our lexicon, inform our thoughts on the world, and maybe even other people. So the ideas presented in the game, as horrifying as they are, say a lot about how Kojima was thinking about, the early internet and what that would lead to 10 plus years later. And this kind of forward thinking is also present in almost every other aspect of the game. The clean, intentionally video gamey design of the big shell fits the meta nature of the game. The voice acting is still incredible, as well as the gameplay mechanics. Not the control scheme, the mechanics. So basically 10 to 15 years after the game came out, people saw Twitter and Reddit and went,
Oh my god. I get it.
There's even the coincidence of the original ending for the story eerily resembling some real-life events, let's say, that occurred in late 2001. And in reaction to this, the development team behind the game scrambled to change the ending last minute before release. Cuts were made, which explains why 1 minute this giant ship is cruising through Manhattan Bay and ends up in the middle of the city in the next scene. So as I stated earlier in the video, all of this brilliant writing wasn't just a result of Kojima's efforts. It's been debated how much co-writer Tomokazu Fukushima contributed to the script of this game, and that's not to mention how much the translation of this game into English might have helped sell its themes better. But I think Kojima's later work proves that even if his current writing efforts aren't up to par with his past collaborations, the ideas present still managed to get people talking years after their initial release. Case in point, Metal Gear Solid 5. As a whole, I think this game isn't as strong as Metal Gear Solid 2. There are quite a few more blemishes on this title in comparison. In short, the biggest criticism drawn towards this game is that it's unfinished. At least it feels that way. So while the reception of this game hasn't changed as much over time as with Metal Gear Solid 2, I've noticed in recent years that more people look back fondly on this title. The game was a significant departure from the previous 4 mainline titles. The gameplay was largely standardized to those of modern third-person action games. Stealth levels were now segments of an open world. And perhaps most shockingly, cutscenes were relatively grounded and subtle compared to past titles. The keyword there is relative. This less in-your-face and subtle kind of storytelling with the themes of identity loss, false narratives, and misinterpretation really took time for people to dissect and understand better. Go on YouTube now, in another browser, please don't click off the video, and just look up Metal Gear Solid 5. You'll see quite a few videos that explain these facets of the game and how much conflicting information is presented to you directly and indirectly throughout the game. So while other Metal Gear titles were more overt in what they were talking about, by the very nature of its own themes, Metal Gear Solid 5 was obscuring the facts of its own story. But hey, fans of a video game reinterpreting its story years later isn't unique to just this series. What stands out the most to me is the fact that Metal Gear Solid 5's own message about identity loss and false narratives have been turned into the most fitting meme possible, Invisible by Duran Duran. Now I'm going to turn into a pseudo know your meme, so sorry in advance. Essentially, the song is being used for these edits because the lyrics describe a person feeling, well, invisible, ignored, and forgotten in a relationship, which can be a reading of how Venom Snake might feel in their role as the doppelganger for the real big boss. It helps that people pretty much gaslit each other into thinking this was a song on the Metal Gear Solid 5 soundtrack, given that it sounds like a throwback to 80s synth-pop bangers. And that's another point right there, fitting in with the false narratives theme. So earlier I was looking at the Genius page for Invisible Duran Duran to, understand the lyrics a little bit more. And I thought it was pretty interesting to see what people had to say about the song. Get some information about, the singer, it's about a one-sided relationship, it grew into something bigger. Pretty cool context, Let's click on the verse, let's see what what this is about. Shy one, walking by the wall, the shadows will not fall, is silently ignored. The character of Quiet, portrayed by Stephanie Houston, is largely ignored and ridiculed by the other staff on Mother Base. She doesn't cast a shadow because she is invisible. So stupid. Further referencing Quiet, discouraged by the noise, living without choice, is a life without a voice. Wait, this actually fits so well. Quiet, who is nicknamed as such because she is unable to speak English due to her hosting the last strain of the English vocal cord parasites. The parasite procedure was done in pursuit of her revenge against Big Boss, almost rendering her without a choice in the matter. Yeah, I mean, no misinformation there. That's entirely what happens in the game. Okay. Here are the singer questions if the person who they were like. So these are actual annotations now. And there's a comment. V has come too. Beautiful. Actually, I didn't see the comments underneath the other ones. Oh, on the first one, this line refers to a legendary Solider Big Boss, whose skill in solo infiltration makes him the most invisible to the eyes of the enemy. God damn it. This is a reference to what the song is about, a one-sided relationship. Cool. Okay, the bridge, invisible, invisible, invisible. I'm expecting a crusty JPEG of Big Boss. They got something better. This may be a reference to the stealth camouflage device featured in the video game Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, which briefly turns Big Boss invisible. Just more JPEGs. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, this was a beautiful find, and I'm glad that I kind of feel bad for Duran Duran. I don't know. Well, I don't know, on TikTok, I don't use TikTok, they like reposted the song on there, so I'm sure they have their own feelings about it. This is probably how music bands feel about JoJo fans when they randomly reference the anime in the YouTube comment section or whatever. Pretty fun stuff. Getting back to games that eerily reflect our modern times, Death Stranding. Maybe not our current day, but a period we just experienced globally, the pandemic. A world where civilization had slowed to a halt. People lived in isolated cities with nobody walking outside, mostly out of fear of deadly entities whose origin was hotly debated. A consequence of this being that people suffer from feelings of isolation and lack of connection with others. With no immediate solution available, their only hope were the people deemed essential for our survival, delivering packages and continuing supply chains, even at the risk of injury or death. Obviously, these parallels are purely coincidental, but Kojima commented on this and admitted he rewrote the entire script of Death Stranding 2, saying he didn't want to predict any more future.
この世界観というかテーマ、これは小島さんはどういう考えで作られたんですか？
企画をしたのは5年前ぐらいなんですけど、トランプが国境に壁を作ったり、アメリカファーストということで。であとは EU からイギリスが抜けるぞ、今抜けてしまいましたけど、そういう世界的に見ても分断が進んでて、孤立化しているという。で本来ならばそれを継承したかっただけなんですよね。ただそれが現実になってしまったんですけど、なんで当時もやっぱり分断と孤立化は進んでたという感じでテーマを選んだんですよね。
It is unfortunate that a lot of people clown on and dismiss this game for being a walking simulator and being too weird to get into. I understand and agree this game isn't for everyone, but at the same time, I don't think the appeal of this game is really that niche. I encourage everyone to at least try the game. Maybe you'll connect with something in it. That said, people have warmed up to this game over time, now that the pre-release hype and expectations have long died out. A fitting reception given that the gameplay itself is a slow burn compared to Kojima's previous work and a lot of modern AAA titles. Death Stranding 2 isn't out yet at the time of this video's release, but the trailers alone are already dealing with some, let's say, controversial material. Wouldn't be surprised if Kojima and his co-writers end up unintentionally dooming us again in real life. Writing and thinking about Kojima's work for several years now has made a few things very apparent to me. Not everyone will understand what we do, what we like, and what we create. It's easy to be dismissive of things that are different and things we don't understand. What's difficult is deriving and creating our own meaning in art. It doesn't have to be, nor should it be, immediately understood by anyone. What it should be is something meaningful to you.
言いたいことがあるので、それをゲームに組み込むので、そうです。世界がインターネットでつながって24時間リアルタイムでつながってるんで、本当ならみんなが幸せになるべきなんですけど、なかなかそうはなってない状況で、インターネットで中傷されたり喧嘩したり、今あるやり方がまずいだけで、なのでゲームではつながるんですけど、ポジティブだけをお互いやり取りできるようにして、そのユーザーが自分のリアルの生活に戻った時に、自ら行動していただければと。ゲームで感じたこととかを、実際に世界を変えるのはユーザーの皆さんなんで、僕はちょっと背中を押すだけなんで、そういう意味で、つながることが悪いんじゃなくて、つなぎ方がおかしいというのを 感じてほしかったですね。
Thank you all for watching what I consider a first of many analysis videos I have planned for this channel. I know that this video largely covered high-level information on these games, but I felt this would serve as a less daunting beginning for the channel. Aside from that, I do stream here on this YouTube channel every Sunday at 5 p.m. US Central. You can also follow me on the social media platforms listed on screen and in the description. That's all I have for now. I appreciate your time, and keep on keeping on.